My name is Rick Andrews, and I'm a wildlife photographer and filmmaker from Western Canada. Over the past several years, I've had wonderful opportunities to photograph a variety of wildlife in some pretty amazing locations, including plains bison and moose in Greater Yellowstone, polar bears and muskox in the subarctic, snow monkeys and the endangered red-crowned cranes in Japan, even the shy and elusive spirit bear in the Great Bear Rainforest of British Columbia. I feel extremely privileged to have been afforded these wonderful opportunities. It's always exciting to travel, to visit new places, and experience new cultures. But when I'm not traveling, I like to spend much of my free time right here in the Oldman River Valley. Located on the northern edge of the Great Plains, this part of southern Alberta is semi-arid. It's home to prickly pear cactus, sagebrush, and prairie rattlesnakes. The Blackfoot First Nations people call this Nappy's River. In Blackfoot culture, Nappy, or the Old Man, is both creator and trickster, and it is here, on the eastern slopes of the Rockies, at the foot of a mountain range known to them as the Teepee Liner, that the Old Man's playing ground is located. It's a sacred place where Nappy taught them a hoop and arrow game as a way of making peace and getting along with each other. From these headwaters, aided by the flows of adjacent creeks and streams, the river steadily grows in size as it heads south. After helping fill the Oldman River Reservoir, water then tumbles back into the Oldman, but this time continues its journey heading east. This riparian area, where the land and the river meet, is an incredibly diverse habitat that is home to almost 80% of this area's wildlife. It is here where I will spend the next year filming, showcasing this diversity and following it throughout each of the 4 seasons. Spring is arriving slowly in the Oldman River Valley, and as the snow and ice continue to melt, fresh green shoots begin pushing their way out of the water. And from the bottom of the wetlands, something is stirring. It's a western painted turtle, digging itself free of the mud where it has spent the winter in hibernation. As the days gradually warm, they will become a more common sight around the wetlands. Beavers spend much of the winter sequestered in their lodges, and for the first time in several weeks, now have access to a fresh food supply. To ensure their coats remain waterproof, beavers spend a great deal of time grooming. This not only promotes higher levels of personal hygiene, but when working together, it also improves social bonds between family members. Not to mention getting a little needed assistance in those hard-to-reach places. Canada geese, too, are enjoying the milder weather and seizing this opportunity to take a quick bath before pairing up. Selecting a good nesting site is essential, yet ownership of these sites is something that is still being decided. And although I've never seen geese nesting in trees, I have seen them using trees as watchtowers, which, like nesting sites, are just as hotly contested. The best nesting sites are usually located close to water, yet out of the reach of land-based predators. Less dominant geese may therefore end up with less than ideal nesting sites, and sometimes may have to wait until next year to try again. As the daylight hours continue to increase, prairie flowers begin to bloom. Shrubs begin leafing out, and the coulee grasses push up new shoots, transforming the river valley into lush shades of green, and reminding me of why spring is my favorite season. Although the cottonwood trees are still a week or two away from leafing out, more and more birds are returning from their wintering grounds in the south, filling the valley once more with their distinctive sounds. In the coulees, prairie rattlesnakes are also beginning to appear at the entrance of their winter dens. Rattlesnakes are ectothermic and rely on sunlight and shade to help regulate their body temperature. As the spring weather begins to warm, they gradually become more active until leaving their dens sometime around the middle of May. Perhaps due in part to their ominous appearance, snakes have often been vilified in folklore and myth, and so are now amongst the most feared and misunderstood reptiles. I don't find them threatening in any way. Instead, they seem as though they simply just want to be left alone. So perhaps instead of fearing them, we should simply respect them and appreciate the valuable service they provide in helping keep the rodent population in check. These great horned owls have been on the nest since late January, and their owlets appear to be only a few more weeks away from fledging. When I first spotted this nest, I wasn't sure how many babies there were, as its location made it difficult to see them all at the same time, and I wondered if perhaps I hadn't counted the same ones twice. I was pretty sure there were 3 owlets, when a 4th one appeared from the back of the nest. This is the first time I've seen a nest with 4 babies this old, so I'm a little surprised that all 4 have made it this far. But it's clear from the apparent healthy appearance of the young, together with an assortment of bird feathers around the base of the tree, that these parents are spending a great deal of time hunting, and seemingly making a pretty good living at it. While the great horned owls have been on the nest for 2 or 3 months now, in the wetlands, killdeer are just beginning their mating and nesting season. Once mating has taken place, the killdeer will build a nest, which is nothing more than a scrape in the bare ground with a few rocks and dried grasses added for good measure. To lure predators away from the nest, they will often invoke the broken wing tactic, in which they pretend to be injured and therefore easy prey. Once the danger has passed, however, they return to the nest and resume their incubation. The river valley is home to both white-tailed and mule deer, and while it's quite common to see mule deer grazing on the sides of the coulee, White-tailed deer appear to prefer the shelter of the woodlands, so it's usually only in the very early morning hours that I find them out in the open. Although mule deer seem to prefer the coulees, they still need to come down once in a while to drink. And since there is safety in numbers, they prefer to do this en masse. Within a few more days, the cottonwood trees and vegetation in the river valley have fully leafed out, offering more protection for ground squirrels and more seclusion for nesting birds like these tree swallows. By early May, goslings of the Canada geese are now making their first appearance. While I think it's doubtful that all of these goslings belong to the same parents, they don't seem to mind managing this daycare they've inherited, and will protect them all as if they were their own. While the goslings grow quickly, they still remain under the protective care of their parents, who are not afraid to run off any intruders who perhaps get just a little too close. By the end of May, the white-tailed bucks are beginning to grow their new antlers, and I'm starting to see more pregnant does bedding down alone in the coulees. There is lots of cover here for their newborns to hide, and although I haven't seen any spring fawns yet, I think it could happen very soon. Then a few days later, I got my first opportunity to film a white-tailed fawn as it lay still in the long grass, where it was waiting patiently for its mother to return. The grass is so tall now that it's the perfect height for concealing young fawns. Yet when they're with her, it's important they stay very close, and that goes doubly true for twins. It doesn't take them long, however, to become more independent. They're curious about their surroundings and want to explore this new world all around them. But these distractions can sometimes lead to them getting lost. But fortunately, Mom is never too far away. Despite their iridescent colors, at only a half an inch long, these dogbane leaf beetles can easily be missed. Emerging from the ground after feeding on the roots of the host plant, the beetles climb up to the leaves where they feed and mate. I found these ones on an Indian hemp plant, which the Blackfoot First Nations traditionally used for making ropes and twines. Because of their toxicity to animals, these plants are sometimes known as dogbane plants, yet it seems to have little impact on the beetles. I read somewhere that the female lays her eggs in a pile of her own feces that she then sticks to the leaves of the plant. Once the law of the hatch, they drop off the leaves and burrow into the soil, where their life cycle begins all over again. It's hard to go anywhere in the woodlands this year without hearing the cheerful sounds of the house wrens. Although it's now early July, I found this one checking out a potential nesting site in a hollow tree. After a cursory inspection, it seemed satisfied with this property and appeared to be serving notice that this nesting site was now taken. It looked like a bit of a fixer-upper and in need of some serious house cleaning. But once that was completed, it began the process of bringing in new building materials, some of which looked easier to place than others. But where there's a will, there's a way. By late July, the water in the wetlands is now the perfect depth for these great blue herons to fish. Barely rippling the water, their stealth and concentration is uncanny. But like all predators, their success rate is far from 100%. The important thing, however, is to keep trying, because sooner or later, it has to pay off. Some days can be hot here, and while our growing twin mule deer fawns find shelter from the scorching summer sun, out on the river, it looks like other activities may soon get underway. While some American white pelicans are still snoozing, others look as though they are getting ready to begin their day. The pelicans are attracted here by the abundance of fish in the river, and while we imagine these must be fairly large fish, in my experience, they are quite the opposite. Small minnows swimming upstream become confused when they find their way blocked by the city weir. While some swim around looking for an alternate route, others try jumping the obstacle, usually with little success. Although these are tiny fish, their abundant numbers don't go unnoticed by the pelicans, who employ a variety of techniques to catch them. While younger pelicans sometimes remain behind to fish alone, adults have learned they have greater success by working together. Forming a semicircle, they drive the fish ahead of them towards a concrete step just below the surface. As the minnows become trapped, the pelicans collectively dip their heads to feed. Turning, they then swim towards the weir, herding the fish ahead of them again, where they continue feeding. Finally, they swim along the weir, driving the minnows into the shallows again, where they are easier to scoop up. When I first saw this, I had a hard time believing that such a large bird could sustain itself by eating such small fish. But then again, nature never ceases to surprise me. There are also other predators that frequent the shallows near the rapids a little further downstream. While we often think of snakes as being mainly land-based reptiles, they are just as comfortable hunting in water as they are on land. Of the 3 varieties of garter snakes found in Alberta, the wandering garter snake is the least common. Yet here in the Oldman River Valley, it's the one you are most likely to see. Like all snakes, they are excellent swimmers and can stay fully submerged for several minutes before having to resurface for air. They seem to prefer shallower water, which is not only warmer, but also concentrates the minnows, making them easier to catch. Like the pelicans further upriver, snakes too employ a variety of methods to catch their prey. Some, I've noticed, like to stay close to the bottom, concealing themselves by swimming amongst the rocks, or sometimes hiding underneath the larger ones. While some snakes are successful using this method, others appear to prefer a more proactive approach. I also notice that while some will bring their catch to the riverbank to eat, others will simply devour their prey while remaining completely submerged. By mid-August, wandering garter snakes will have been out of their dens for a couple of months now, but these baby or neonate bull snakes are just now beginning to appear. Although mature bull snakes are amongst the largest snakes in North America, these neonates are still only about 30 centimeters long, and therefore have a lot of growing to do before reaching their full size. By the end of August, the pelicans have left the river to begin their long journey south, making room for a very rare visitor to this area. The snowy egret typically lives much further south in the United States, and in fact, this is the first one I've ever seen up here. I'm surprised at how small it is. Its body doesn't seem much larger than this young ring-billed gull, but its size seems to work well, as it can position itself close to the water, where it can focus its attention on any unsuspecting fish. Resembling the color and markings of a ladybug, I found these red milkweed beetles feeding on milkweed plants. The seed pods of the plants are now beginning to open, and soon will begin to reseed themselves. But of course they are not alone, as all through the river valley I'm now seeing more and more fruit on the shrubs and bushes, as they too begin the process of reseeding themselves. Soon the leaves of the cottonwoods are beginning to change color, and as the sun sets on summer, I can see that fall is not that far away. After a long, hot, and very dry summer, nature is putting on an impressive show of color. While many of the summer bird population have already left, there are still a few stragglers like these cormorants, mergansers, and a great blue heron that I still see sometimes fishing along the river. Throughout the summer months, our need for water has had a dramatic impact on the river levels. And since the wetlands is an oxbow pond fed by the river, its water level drops too. But I think this is about as low as I've ever seen it. As the nights become colder, the painted turtles here welcome the warmth of the sun and begin looking around for secluded spots to climb out and warm themselves up. This seclusion, however, is sometimes short-lived, as others seemingly want to get in on a good thing too. Well camouflaged, this great horned owl is enjoying an afternoon nap here. And while he will remain active all winter, the painted turtles and snakes will soon begin to prepare themselves for the next 5 or 6 months of hibernation. The turtles will survive the winter months by returning to the mud at the bottom of the wetlands. While the snakes will return to the relative warmth of their hibernacula after a summer spent hunting and mating. Although the beaver's diet during spring and summer contains a large percentage of plant life, in fall they begin to prepare for winter by cutting down trees, making it easier to reach the branches. Once the branches and twigs have been acquired, they transport them back to their food cache, which they are now starting to build outside the entrances of their lodge. They will use this cache to sustain themselves throughout the winter, so it's very important that it just doesn't float away. To ensure this doesn't happen, they secure it by forcing the ends of the twigs and branches into the mud of the riverbed, or sometimes by interweaving them with the branches of the lodge itself. The mule deer doe that I first saw earlier this year continues to keep a watchful eye on her growing twin fawns, as they all forage at the bottom of the coulee. The spots of the fawns are now almost completely indistinguishable, and their red summer coats have been replaced with gray winter ones that will continue to thicken as the weather grows colder. By early fall, the antlers of male deer will have now reached their full size, and the velvet membrane that supplied blood to their growing antlers now begins to dry and fall off. To help with this process, the bucks will rub their antlers against small trees or saplings. In the next few weeks, I watch as an impressive transformation begins to take place. With testosterone levels rising, the neck muscles of mature bucks now begin to swell, and their behavior becomes much more aggressive. Establishing his right to mate, the dominant buck begins to drive the other males away, dispersing their summer bachelor club and marking this territory as his own. Like the white-tailed deer, the dominant mule deer buck now begins to spend most of his time with the does. And since they are only in estrus for a few days each year, he will now stay with them both day and night. While a doe's normal instinct is to run off, it now tells her she should perhaps stick around instead. As she gets closer to estrus, she begins to urinate more frequently. And by curling his upper lip while raising his head, the buck will be able to determine her readiness for mating by detecting the pheromones in her urine. An estrus doe will often bed for protection from the aggressive behavior of this buck. But he will protect her by staying close by and driving off any other would-be contenders. Once mating has taken place, however, he won't stick around for very long. Instead, he immediately moves on in search of the next doe. This can be an exhausting time of year for the dominant buck. Mating and fighting can result in him losing as much as 30% of his body weight, so a chance to lay down and rest must come as a very welcome break. Late in the fall, a flock of magpies led me to a deer carcass, where I found them busily feeding. Soon, however, they were joined by a coyote, who insisted that despite the magpies finding the carcass first, that they wait their turn until he was finished eating. After taking his fill, he trotted off into the woodlands, leaving the carcass behind for the magpies. But later that night, he returned to feed again, this time bringing a few more family members with him. As fall progresses, the daylight hours continue to shorten until the night gradually becomes twice as long as the day. I've always wondered what wildlife do here at night, but it seems their constant quest for food keeps them as active at night as they are during the day. Getting ready for winter has now become a full-time job. Winter has arrived in the Oldman River Valley, and for wildlife that do not migrate or hibernate, it will become their most challenging season. Although not true hibernators, the beavers will now spend a large part of the winter tucked away inside their riverbank lodges. Insulated by a blanket of snow, the lodge is kept warm by the beaver's own body heat. And when they get hungry, they simply swim under the frozen river ice to access their winter food cache. High in the cottonwood trees, it is not uncommon to see that some of the tree bark has been chewed away, and during daylight hours, those with sharp eyes will be able to spot the hungry culprits. Curled up in a ball, from a distance, they sometimes remind me of large birds' nests. But a closer look reveals that they are, in fact, sleepy porcupines. The American porcupine is the largest of the porcupine species, and throughout the spring and summer, its diet consists mainly of buds, fruit, and leaves. But in winter, tree bark now becomes their primary food source, which they access mainly at night. Despite the frigid winter temperatures, many Canada geese, as well as the smaller cackling goose, will remain here all winter. Providing the river still has some open spots for them to roost, it will keep them safe from land-based predators like this hungry coyote. Yet they will still need to keep a sharp eye out for other predators that have recently moved into the area. After a little early morning preening, they head off in search of food. Fortunately, it can still be found in abundance in the fields of the surrounding farmland, and taking advantage of this, they will now spend most of their day feeding here. With snow covering the ground, the valley's coyotes must spend most of the day and a good part of their night hunting. And while they have excellent night vision, in winter they rely mostly on their sensitive noses to help detect food. Like most predators, coyotes are opportunistic hunters, and in winter, mice, voles, rabbits, pheasants, muskrat, and the occasional duck or goose may all contribute to their diet, and as we've already seen, they will also eat carrion. The winter months, however, are perhaps toughest on the valley's larger mammals, like the white-tailed and mule deer. As they did in summer, the white-tailed deer continue to feed in the woodlands, while mule deer will continue to forage on the sides of the coulees, taking advantage of the dried leaves they still find clinging to the bushes. In summer, with plenty to eat, deer may consume 6 or 8 pounds of plant material each day, but in winter, reduced to eating mainly twigs and buds, they may get as little as 2 or 3. As the snow deepens, they must work harder to find the food they need to sustain themselves. It's a fine balance, finding enough food to eat without expending too much energy to get it. And in the end, this delicate balance is often the deciding factor of who will make it to spring and who will not. Fortunately, however, sometimes help arrives in the form of winter Chinook winds. Occurring where the Rocky Mountains meet the Great Plains, the Chinooks are warm winds that come howling across the prairies, sometimes raising winter temperatures by as much as 20 or 30 degrees Celsius in just a few hours. While the Chinooks may only last a few days, it is often enough to melt much of the ice and snow, providing wildlife with easier, albeit temporary access to the dried grasses below. Winter, however, is not quite over yet. There will be more snow, more biting winds, and more cold nights yet to come. But as winter progresses, the sun slowly begins climbing higher in the sky, and there are now signs that winter is starting to release its icy grip. Out on the Oldman, the river is beginning to break up, and in the wetlands and oxbows, there are also signs that winter is drawing to a close. Richardson's ground squirrels have now awoken from their long hibernation, and despite there still being snow on the ground, they're taking their first look of the year at the outside world. It's also been a long winter for this coyote, and this new activity is something that hasn't escaped its attention. But today, it seems, luck is not on its side. The River Valley wildlife have succeeded in enduring the frigid winter temperatures, the deep snows and cold biting winds to survive their most challenging season. But perhaps their greatest challenge of all still lies ahead. It's been a little over 40 years since I first moved to Lethbridge, and in that time, our population has more than doubled. On all sides of the city, there are new housing subdivisions now where farmland once stood. In the river valley, too, there is also a significant human presence. Some of this is by necessity, and some of it by design. After spending the past year filming here, it's hard not to become attached to this beautiful valley. I've learned so much about the wildlife here, and in many ways, it now feels like home. And as I look around, I see I'm not the only one. There are people who want to live here and play here. But finding an equitable balance with our natural world is not always easy. Somehow, we always seem to get the upper hand. That's why I'm thankful for the vision of local conservationists like Elizabeth Hall and Helen Schuler. They understood the need to preserve and safeguard some of the wildlife habitat in this river valley, and the importance of teaching others about it too. Yet where environmentally sensitive areas have been set aside as a nature reserve, some of us seem a little reluctant to respect the rules. Even during the height of a hot, dry summer, it seems there may be some that are still unwilling to do this. Perhaps the greatest threat to wildlife today is habitat loss. When this happens, wildlife have little choice but to move further into our world. Yet when they do, we often see them as just pests. This is why continued protection of this river valley habitat is so very important, and why I hope that despite the city's continued growth, we can maintain an equitable balance with our natural world so that it will continue to be a treasured resource for the benefit of everyone and the many generations yet to come.